We have one more bash coding skill to get comfortable with before we have everything we need to do the midterm exam, and that is testing to see if a file or a directory exists. And we can do that with an if statement in a pretty simple test, and so we'll just walk through what it's like to code that test. So let's start with gedit. I'll call it if file dir test.sh. That's really long. There we go. All right, so #bang/bin/bash. So first we want to get a name from a user. So I can say, I'll just do the read-p, enter a name, and it'll go into the variable name. Not very original. And then, so if it's a directory that exists, you can use the -d option in the test, followed by the variable name, or the variable, or the contents of the variable. And if it is true that a directory exists that matches the contents of the variable name, then we can say $name is a directory. Otherwise we could say $name is not a directory. Yeah, something like that. Save. See what that looks like. Add execute permission for that file. So I'll type in if, capital F, and tab, because it's a long file name, and I can use tab completion at the command prompt to save me some typing and save me from making typographical errors. So let's look at that. Read-p means read using a prompt into the variable name, and so then the user types whatever it is, it goes into the name. Then we have an if statement, -d, $name. So if it exists as a directory matching the contents of this variable, then we'll say name is a directory, else name is not a directory. Okay, let's try it. /if, capital F, file test.sh. It says enter a name, there we go. So we'll say, well, we can see in this ls that I've got several directories in here, so we'll say documents is a directory, and it says documents is a directory. I'll arrow up and run it again, and this time we'll say Mothra, and it'll say Mothra is not a directory. Alright, so we can do something similar for files. Copy that code, Control-C, Control-V, and we'll change the -d to a -f, and we'll change directory to file. Pretty straightforward. So now we could say, if we run it again, so enter a name. Now let's test file. So we'll look at Mothra. Mothra is not a directory, nor is it a file. But I could create the Mothra. I could say echo grr and redirect that output to the file Mothra. And then if I look at do an ls-l of all the files that start with M, then I'm I can make this use a little more real estate here and see a little more of my screen. There. So there it is, Mothra, and it has a file size of 7 bytes. That corresponds to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 characters, 1 byte per character, plus an end of file marker. So now if I run it again, if file test.sh, enter name, Mothra. Mothra is not a directory, but Mothra is a file. And then of course, because we've got, it's an if, else, fi block. If it is a file, then we could do stuff with it. We can say ls-l $name and save that and run that. Enter name, mothra. So it says Mothra is not a directory, Mothra is a file, and then it gives me the long listing of the Mothra file. So being able to test whether or not a directory exists, and then being able to act accordingly, and being able to test whether or not a file exists and act accordingly can be very useful in shell scripting. And this technique will be useful when you do the midterm exam.